Hello, my name is Lauren Devins, and I am here with Jennifer and Ben from our team, as well as Marty and Rich from Bad Rhino. And we are here today to discuss Threads, as well as Twitter, which is also known as X. So I just wanted to kick it off with a quick question. So has anyone here used Threads for themselves, their business, or any other clients?
I use it for like 10 minutes.
Okay. How did you find it?
I clicked the button on Instagram when it came up. I didn't even know what it was. So, which is common, with any new thing. So I clicked on it, saw it, and I haven't been back in since.
I don't think you're alone there, Marty, by any sense of the means, because it seems like there was like 100 million when they started, and now last metric I saw, they were down to like 9.6 million active users, and I don't know how active they actually are, and take that with a grain of salt because everybody's got different metrics, but it does seem like they just keep declining a little bit.
Yeah. I jumped in and created 2 threads, and it was, my go-to GIFs and, see what if anything could generate. And I had one person like it, and you're not really expecting that from the beginning, but I just wanted to see what the capability is, like what it's all about, like everyone was doing, right? And I think like you get those 100 followers right away and you think this might have legs, and I think everyone saw that. But then after those 2 threads over the course of 2 days, I haven't done one thing since. I've been in looking, but that's about it. Just kind of looking around, not building much for myself, just kind of seeing what's possible, which so far we're not too sure.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like people have similar experiences jumping on, seeing what the deal is, hopefully, bringing over some of their followers from Instagram, maybe asking some questions. But from what I've seen, people's time on the page or time on Threads has decreased significantly from 19 minutes down to 4 minutes on average. So people may just jump on, scroll, look at a few threads, and then say, okay, there's not as much going on as on these other established platforms.
Yeah, it kind of feels like somebody really well, being Facebook or Meta, invited you to a party to come to, and you go into the party to check it out, and you look around and you're like, I don't know, there's really nothing going on here. This isn't that great. So you leave. But it's brought me back a couple times to be like, has anything changed here? Is there anything worthwhile to look at or read, or is somebody using this in a way that is new and innovative, that it becomes a different and meaningful platform? And like, to me, none of those things have happened yet. So
there's no identity, right? Like, people don't know how it's different from Twitter or Instagram, and so when there's no identity, there's really no purpose, and that kind of leads into like brands don't know how to use it, right? The big brands all jumped in because you have the autofollow option. You're going to get 100,000 people right away. So of course you're going to jump in. The McDonald's, the Wendy's, they can all have fun right away, but smaller brands have no idea what to do. So it just trickles down where no one has any idea what to do, right? It ends up just looking like everyone's Instagram feed. It's just exactly what it looks like. The same images are going over, or they're trying text posts or text threads like they'd see on Twitter or X. And it just feels like it's more of the same noise that they had from both platforms, right? So people don't really know what to do, and that's probably just the functionality isn't there yet. It might never be.
Yeah, I did hear there was some strange things going on with their algorithms where you got messages from people you follow and messages from people you don't follow. And, it just seemed like it was a little confusing when it first started. I'm also wondering, just the marketing side of me is I look at Facebook, I look at Instagram, you look at what those platforms offer in terms of social media, and Threads that was being compared at the time to Twitter. Is that really their Meta's audience? As far as who Meta really focuses on and what the content is that comes across on those, people might have been expecting it to be something different, but to your point, it really isn't. And it just seems like one more thing that somebody needs to follow.
I think you're ignoring like the big thing about it, or everybody is it's just a pissing match between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. That's all it is. They basically copied everything and pulled everything together, and the next thing you know, you have Threads, which is a carbon copy of Twitter, which is kind of what Zuckerberg's done his entire career. So like when you look at it, the timing of him fighting with somebody or whatever they're going to do, doing all that is just kind of, it's a BS thing. It's a hobby between billionaires. So X actually, my opinion, Twitter, his goal is to take over Google, which if you go and you look at the history of business, Elon Musk, with all the things that he's done, countless, right? And been involved and also on the perimeter of a variety of other things that people use day in, day out, from PayPal to even the earliest forms of social media and those things that have failed or have taken off. And he's had X.com for forever, right? So all he did was buy Twitter, right? Why did he buy Twitter? Because he wanted to rebrand it X and actually have a user base in the community ready to rock and roll, right? I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying makes total sense. But then he's always been on the outside of the quote unquote billionaires inside like Google and all that. And his whole goal is, the first thing he did was take off the video limits, or one of the first things he did. Why? Because he can monetize that. Then the second thing he did is added in monetization for all the creators, right? So one of the big things he put in there is, all right, YouTube people, you want to make some real money, come over to Twitter and put your videos here. So like when you look at the whole thing, it doesn't matter what Threads is, it doesn't matter what TikTok is, it doesn't matter what Facebook or Meta or whatever it is, it's all the same crap. It's all out there from a social media perspective. It has value to communicate with other people, obviously. But then on the business end of things, what's his plan? Well, his plan isn't, for X to just keep it as quote unquote Twitter. He already changed the name, canned 80% of the workforce, streamlined everything, put everything into play, plays both sides of the aisle, now puts into play, I'm going to pay the creators. So now people have a reason to go there. And what's that eat into? YouTube, which has all these restrictions, and Google and other conversations where people can't monetize. So the next thing you know, what's he have? This X.com, which he's been talking about forever. And he rebrands it as X almost instantaneously out of the blue one day. Like you didn't know that they were going to rebrand Twitter as X. Mark Zuckerberg sitting there doing whatever, where people are still utilizing Facebook, still has a ton of value in Meta and Instagram. And he does a simple, stupid thing that just kind of capture a piece of that PR, for lack of a better term, by creating Threads, which makes no sense. It makes zero sense. It doesn't even make any sense. And I'm actually irritated that I clicked the button, because then all it does is just pull all the people that are following you or vice versa on Instagram, which is, what the heck are they actually there for? They're actually there to show images and other things. So it'd be interesting to see any sort of pivot. And I think if you did this in 2010, it'd be a whole different conversation versus doing it in 2023. Like, who wants another thing that's like that, right? So where's the market research in there? So it's very fascinating to watch.
Yeah, Marty, you touched on one thing I think is huge, which is, so at the time Elon was buying Twitter, he was already immersed in the Web3 stuff, and the whole Web3 movement was on like paying creators through blockchain and the ability to do that. And so when he first did it, my thought was, oh, great, this is an easy way for him to take Twitter and have it be like content syndication and content attribution and all the things to kick back to creators. And he understands blockchain, he understands Web3, and this is an amazing platform with community built in to be able to just do that. I think crypto crashing and all the like stuff that happened soon thereafter sucked and really was like, okay, we're going to have to pivot. But playing the long game out, that still works. I mean, that definitely still is an easy way for you to just, not easy, but a good way for him to be able to say, create content on my platform, community's built in, and yeah, come over here and look at it. And then Zuckerberg right on. I mean, this is like, think about how geeks would fight. It's battle bots, right? They're basically deploying their own bots to fight against each other, just the same way. And I'm a geek, I'm allowed to say this type of stuff, right? But like, that's what they're doing. They're talking about a cage match, and this is the best cage match they could do in a public forum by deploying their own, tools that they feel like are their bots fighting against each other, using business and technology to fight. We're all just pawns in the game.
It's revenge of the nerds. It is. Marketing hasn't changed. It's just the medium.
Yeah, Marty, you brought up a good point that no one really wants something new like this, right? In the last 5 years, Twitter's engagement's been declining, right? Before you know, like everything that's happened in the last year and a half, whatever. Twitter's engagement has been declining. In all of our conversations with clients, no one's ever been like, Rich, can you find me a substitute for Twitter? Like, no one's ever been like, find me a new Twitter. Like, no one's ever wanted that. Either it's for them. There's always a place for it. Like, we always have place for Twitter and purpose, but no one has said, Rich, like, find me a new Twitter. So I don't know where that research was, that people have been looking for one Twitter than another. Like, that's what's funny to me about it, is no one's been like, we need another Twitter account. And that's what's been confusing to me about it.
Yeah, I agree. They don't want a new platform. And when I think of like what did Twitter do for people like, what was the main use case for it? I wasn't ever a power Twitter user, but I saw the main use case for it was instantaneous, like, search for something that just happened. So, you know, there's a fire in my community and I could see the smoke. I can't find out anything about that unless I go to a real immediate, like, stream of something where my local community might be posting about that, or I could just search for something and it's going to show up. Yeah. So I do think there's a need for a platform just like that, where that gets delivered. And I don't honestly see another platform that exists like that. I don't know that Facebook's it, but I feel like that's the only gap that I've seen as far as like why do continue to use it. And Lauren, I know you love it. I mean, you guys can challenge me all day on that. I've just never found the use case for me as a user on it.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, for about 10 years, I've been on Twitter pretty much every day. Just a lot of it came from being a fan of things. And Twitter was kind of a community where you could talk about things that had just happened and then kind of build your follower base and talk to people. I've made friends from Twitter, so I've really enjoyed that community aspect. And I have been noticing as well, as you mentioned, Rich, that engagement is going down. People were not enjoying it seemingly as much. But even moving forward, I'm seeing some very negative feelings from users about this transition to X, to the point where they're refusing to update the app in the first place so that the X replaces the bird. Or if it does get updated, they're changing the name on their home screens to say Twitter and updating the logo themselves to be the bird. So I think it's very interesting to see. Yeah. I haven't personally seen any positive feedback about the change from Twitter to X. I don't know about you all.
I mean, Twitter is still the best platform for searching something specific, right? Like, whatever, sporting event, the Grammys, like something big happens in the news, like people still go there to search to see what's happening, right? And if Threads is supposed to be a clone of Twitter, it's a really crappy clone, right? Because you can't search by content. When you go to search, you can only find users. So if I type in the word football, I just find football accounts, but I can't see any content. And that's my primary reason for Twitter that I still use it today, is what's happening here, or industry related stuff for clients, right? You can repurpose content. It's a really, I mean, if it's supposed to be a clone, it's a really crappy clone, right? Because that's like what you mentioned, Lauren, is like, you could get into a subculture, right? And read everything about that and then add your own, and then you meet people that way. And like, Thread seems to be, it's really just for your own followers at this point. You're not going to really grow through that sort of second level content. I think that's what's kind of, that's what's missing from it. They might add it later, but I mean, that's what I still use Twitter for myself, as a personal user, but you know.
I think Twitter originally just being the original microblog, if you remember, that's what it was called, 140 characters. I think it's more like that now in the past, whatever they took it over. I think there's actually more positives than negatives. I think people are just choosing to be cranky about it, just like everything else, which is fine. I have no problem with that, because when you change something, you're always going to have some people that are going to be irritated, some people that aren't, to your point, Lauren. But I think originally, I still use Twitter. If I'm not on there twice a day, at least twice a day. I've always used it for information because it's faster than anything else to get a pulse on something. If you Google something, I mean, you're talking minutes and hours, and even sometimes less than hours, just really minutes. But if you want to find something out, it's usually Twitter is going to give you a more accurate of a immediacy that's going on. And to Rich's point, and then what you said, Lauren, too, is I still have tons of people from 15 years ago that still interact with me on Twitter, that when I was a headhunter and recruiter before we even getting into Bad Rhino. And then starting out, like a lot of the information that you get on cutting edge stuff, whatever it might be, even an interest, a hobby, marketing, technology, the list goes on, is, just as long as you knew how to adjust your X feed, or back in the day, Twitter, adjust it so that you got the right news feed in there, you could really have some powerful, quick search tools that you could use in your day-to-day life, day-to-day business, or just having fun, going to concerts or playing a sport or things like that. And then you could connect with those people. And a lot of the people that are actually follow me on Twitter, like I went to clean out my Twitter account like 6 months ago. And I was like, oh my God, I remember you guys and girls and all these people from just different things. And they were actually like legitimate people. Some of them I've met, a lot of them I've met in real life. Like, this is like kind of cool. I can't say the same in Facebook, Instagram, etc. So like Twitter being that original quote unquote micro blog, and what I've seen Elon move it towards was getting away from adjusting the original intent, was letting people just talk and do things, and then opening it up more with creators and perhaps getting paid, to Ben's point. And I think the disruption is actually happening differently that way down the road. Whereas Zuckerberg, going back to the same point where he just crafted up Threads, he hasn't been able to do it. So like just throwing something in there is just, again, it's a nerd fight. They're just slapping each other.
Yeah, for sure. So if any of your clients came to you and said, what should they do about, potentially moving to X or moving to Threads, what would you say?
I tell them the same thing I tell everybody. X, if you're already on Twitter, then stay on Twitter. If you don't have a Twitter handle, get one. You don't need to do anything, but you just want to claim your real estate. But then see how it plays out on Threads. Like Threads is useless at the moment. Like, unless you're a huge brand to just claim your real estate, or even smaller brands, you might as well. But other than that, I wouldn't spend a second on it. Can't track it, can't do anything. Like Rich said, there's nothing there to search. So why even be there?
We've had the conversations with several brands we work with, right? The smaller brands, mid-size, it's not even a conversation at this point, because once they learn that the amount of content they'd have to produce on Threads, I think, to really make an impact, they shy away real quick. I feel like you have to produce a good amount of volume there. And the others that are a bit bigger, I always kind of start by saying, like, sure, it might be my job to tell them what the purpose is. I'm like, but I like to ask them that. What do you see the purpose of content on this platform? And they can't tell me one thing. And I'm like, that's kind of all you need to know, right? If you're not sure where it is, and again, none of them asked for a Twitter replacement or an Instagram replacement. It would just be one more channel, be more time for something they're not sure what the value is. So I say, save the real estate, like Marty mentioned, and then we'll watch it and see what happens. If it opens up in the ad network, right? If that moves into Facebook ad network, then maybe that's something we look at with Meta. There's different things that could open up, but for now, it's like, let's just focus on building up your Pinterest account. We know the purpose there. Like, let's talk about video content more. It's like, let's work on established communities first before we open up something that we have no idea about.
Yeah, I'd add too. Just they're all just different channels. And like when you're choosing which channel you're going to continue to invest time and money into, you look at what's already working. To Marty's point, if you're already using Twitter and it's working, great. Continue to leverage it. Do what you're doing there that is working, and more of it. And from a like, what does Threads offer standpoint, if you don't know the audience and you don't know how they're using it and how you're going to be able to engage them, then why spend any time there? It's like a billboard on a highway that's not even your target market. So just treat them like channels and do the evaluation from a strategy standpoint to see where you should deploy your time and energy.
People
Yeah.
have hard enough time gaining Instagram followers these days with algorithms and everything else. It's like, do you want to add one more thing in that everyone has to look at 10 followers, right? Like, do people it's like, just don't muddy the water. Don't, just focus on what you have and then try to make that better before you open it up somewhere else.
Yeah, and to Ben's point, focusing on your market is where it's really at. It's great to claim your real estate maybe on Twitter, but if that's not the demographic you're going after, and that demographic's not going to be on Twitter, hold on to it, because you never know if you're going to open up a new product or a new solution that's going to appeal to maybe a different demographic that would use that platform more often. But Like you said, if Instagram's working, if Facebook's working for you, focus your energy and your effort there, because that's where you're getting the most engagement. If LinkedIn is something that's working for you because you're focusing more on maybe B2B versus B2C, look at that as well. But you've really got to, I always go back to what Ben said was the strategy, and looking at who your customers are and where they're going to be. And if they're not there, even like you said, Threads, huge. I'm sure a bunch of people's customers jumped on Threads as part of that 100+ million. How many are still there? You really don't know, because to that point, you can't get any kind of metrics or data.
Yeah, to that point, you also have to remember, like, people tend to forget the abundant failures of like social media platforms that have come out and failed over time. Like, it's not easy to maintain people's time and attention. You got like Google with Circles and Vine that came out, which if it came out now might have been a huge hit and would have been great, but it was before its time, in my opinion. I thought it was great, but like they didn't really take off and stick. And so for Threads to come out and just assume that it's going to take off and work, probably not as easy. And then as far as like Twitter and what Elon's doing with it to kind of build a lot of distrust, stealing people's handles and things like that, it may really derail it,
Yeah. And another thing is, one of the major changes that has been made ever since Elon took over was the introduction of Twitter Blue, and needing to pay $8 a month for that subscription that he recently renamed to X Premium. So I'm curious as to, because, a lot of people are saying that they're having trouble gaining traction on Twitter and reaching their audience. And one of the things that Twitter Blue did was it gave people preferential treatment basically on the algorithms, so that if they are paying for Twitter Blue, then they're going to get seen higher, A, in people's timelines, and B, in responses to popular tweets, as opposed to the posts that just got the most amount of retweets and likes. So I was wondering if you've recommended to any of your clients to use Twitter Blue to try and reach their audiences better.
I haven't done it for reaching an audience, but I am highly in favor of it due to people stealing my identity and my company's identity recently. That's across the board. I have a different viewpoint on there that you can validate the company name, your name, and actually have something to back it up. And to me, $8 a month is nothing. The preferential treatment, the algorithm, I have no idea anything about that. But however, from a company standpoint, from a person that has a following that they want to protect, I would highly recommend it at the moment. If you talked to me about 3 months ago, I probably said no. However, watching some things around the internet recently with paid ads, with bots, and then this goes across Google, Facebook, everywhere, I would highly recommend, if you have a business or you have a personal brand that you want to protect, to do it. Whether that gives you preferential treatment or not, I really don't care. However, the protection of your own identity and the credibility of your company, I would highly recommend doing it. And that's just from personal experience.
Perfect.
I mean, we don't have many clients these days using using Twitter as an engagement platform, right? They're using it for pushing out links, using to push out certain things that can be found in search. No one currently is rapidly trying to grow their Twitter account on our end, right? So, that's not something we're pushing them to purchase for that reason right now, but it's on the table as a conversation. It's just not something that's come up, anytime recently.
That's really helpful. Thank you. All right, so I think I'm just going to wrap up this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. To our viewers, please be sure to subscribe to our channel for future videos in the world of web design development and other hot tips to help you grow your business. So we'll see you soon.